morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where, as you might recall, a couple of months ago, I did a piece on Donnie Yen, intro to Donnie Yen, and at the end of it, I said, please follow Donnie Yen on Twitter as he tries to build a stateside following. He's very big in China. But I did not say to follow his Instagram account. It's so hard to know what social media to follow these days. And sure enough, that's where he made the announcement over the weekend that he's doing Ip Man 4. And luckily, one of you forwarded me that information, and then I retweeted it out because I'm still largely in the Twitter space. Trying to get more into Instagram. Thank you to everyone who's following me. I'm honored to have over 6,000 followers, but I'm still figuring out that space. But Donnie Yen seems to have no trouble with it, and impressively, he does most of his own social media. But he posted a photo of himself and his director Wilson Yip and said, "We're doing a fourth one," which he was a little bit more ceremonial about it, but that's how I felt inside when I read the headline. And I think that's great. He continues to work with Wilson Yip, the director. You know, we talk a lot about, Hollywood actors finding that special someone behind the camera to help them make their career and vice versa. The most recent example I gave was Mark Wahlberg and Peter Berg with Deepwater Horizon, etc. But I think that it's important to realize that the same phenomenon happens in other countries and their film industries, and Donnie Yen and Wilson Yip are one such combination. Now, one of the reasons the Ip Man 4 announcement might not have been such a big deal here in the United States is that these movies continue to not do very well stateside, which is a real shame because they're fantastic. Ip Man 3 is really the only one that's gotten on the board to date, and that's because Mike Tyson had a small part in it. But it only made $2.6 million here in the United States. But globally, it pulled in $156 because $124 million came from China alone. So you can see why they would want to make a fourth entry, and there's still a lot of Ip Man's life story to tell. Ip Man, a real grandmaster, an actual person who is responsible for training Bruce Lee. Now, so far, they've told his life pretty much up until them, training Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee, they had a cameo of that, an actor portraying Bruce Lee in Ip Man 3. They were maybe going to go CGI. They decided to cast someone. And so I would think that that's the natural and obvious place to go for Ip Man 4, which might make it do a little bit better globally. Ip Man, just if you're wondering, lived to 1972. And I think they haven't really gotten past the 50s or 60s in the films. They're fantastic movies. If you've not watched Ip Man, please do. The first one is available dubbed if you're not into reading subtitles, but I really, I think you want to get Donnie Yen's full performance, so I would watch them. I think actually Ip Man 1 is only available dubbed because I would have wanted to watch it, in the original language. But I haven't seen 2. I've seen 1 and 3. They're spectacular. And I think that I can see why it's made Donnie Yen so famous. As I've said before in my coverage of the movies, he's like the Bing Crosby of martial arts. And, Bing Crosby made a bunch of Father O'Malley movies where he played a Catholic priest helping out the neighborhood. And that's very much what Donnie Yen's playing. And he's really good at it. He's so good. So watch those movies. It'll be interesting also to see, I think Ip Man 4, not only is there more story to tell, but Donnie Yen's finally trying to transition to the United States. He did once before behind the camera. Watch my Donnie Yen video. I'll put a link down below in the video description so you can check that out. But now in front of the camera, I think that because actually of the fame brought to him by the Ip Man movies, he is going to be obviously in Rogue One. Although actually maybe not obviously. They haven't really been promoting that too much, at least stateside, and I think that's a mistake. I think they're underestimating the fandom for Donnie Yen and I think to some degree Riz Ahmed after the night of, but they keep playing up Felicity Jones. But anyway, he's also in Triple X Return of Xander Cage with Vin Diesel. So with those 2 films coming out this year, I think that perhaps this would be a great time for Ip Man 4 with Bruce Lee in the film to jump stateside. And but great movies. Ip Man is a wonderful wonderful individual, and they have a very strong message about community and doing the right thing, which is rare actually to see in movies these days. So I really like them quite a bit. All right, so that's the first story of the day. The second story is that the Han Solo movie continues to take shape as they get ready to go before the cameras. Why did they cast Han Solo so early? Many people feel because he might pop up in Rogue One, which would be interesting. Alden Ehrenreich, of course, landing the role. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, I really respect Phil Lord and Chris Miller as filmmakers, from the Jump Street movies to the Lego film, and I even like their Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball movies. But I'm not, even though I think Alden Ehrenreich is extremely talented from Hail Caesar, I don't quite see him as Han Solo, but maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. But there have been rumors for some time now that they're going to put Lando Calrissian in the movie, which would be fabulous. And, Donald Glover might get that role. There are a couple of people up for that. Also, Ice Cube's son, I believe, which would be Billy D. Williams is cool, but I don't know if he's like Ice Cube and Ice Cube Jr. cool, right? So that would be really interesting. But now they're looking to cast the female lead in the movie, and what do you know? It's not going to be a white brunette. I guess that would be a little too close to Princess Leia, who Han Solo will eventually meet. But I find this interesting because, of course, they've introduced a black female character in the Han Solo comic book as of late. So I would imagine that this is the same individual. Now, the people they're considering, according to the Hollywood trades, are Tessa Thompson, which I think is ridiculous because she's Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok, and it's like, don't cross the streams, Disney. I think it's really hard to move from one major franchise like that to another, particularly at the same studio. So I actually, especially because they're so similar in fan bases. Maybe the live action fairy tales I would be okay with, but I'm not so keen on someone appearing in both Marvel and Star Wars movies. I think that's going to seem messy. Zoe Kravitz is being considered. I think she's been passed over too many times, Zoe Kravitz, at this point. I think she's a little bit of old news. She was in the Divergent movies. She was in X-Men First Class, like blink and you'll miss it. I just think that Zoe Kravitz has had her opportunity, and I think that, I'm not saying she can't find maybe an amazing role at some point to redefine herself, kind of like Matthew McConaughey did with True Detective and Dallas Buyers Club, and even Jared Leto. But I mean, this isn't that kind of role. This isn't like, wow, Zoe Kravitz just like blew my mind. This is like a standard, blockbuster, female lead, but come on, the movie's not going to focus on her. So I just feel that she's not a particularly exciting choice. Then Naomi Scott is also up apparently for the part, and she is, of course, the new upcoming Power Rangers. So that could be good. There's a lot of buzz around Power Rangers. But who I wish they would consider is Deborah Aorin from Luke Cage, who played Candace, the hostess at Cottonmouth's Club, Harlem's Paradise. I thought she was great. It's a small role, but I not only thought that she did a good job and made quite an impression in the role, but I think she's obviously very pretty, so she fits what they're obviously looking for in a female lead. But also, I would like to see them start going with a little bit darker skin with black actresses. They consistently go light-skinned, and I think that while we want to have opportunities, obviously, for everybody, Black Panther, by the way, Ryan Coogler is not doing that, which I think is very telling considering the fact that he's a black director. But I think that, again, as we've talked about before, and I've seen many articles discussing this, if you continually put only light-skinned black actresses into big movie roles, it really sends the message that dark skin isn't as desirable. And Lupita Nyong'o has said that she's struggled to get roles, and obviously has, except, Disney, I think, is helping her, and she's going to be in the Black Panther movie. But I just feel like Tessa Thompson, Zoe Kravitz, and Naomi Scott just seem like more of the same when it comes to casting black actresses in Hollywood. And I think that there are better options available, like Deborah Aorin, who's already she already has like kind of a relationship with fans, but it's such a small part on a different platform, because you could say, well, that's Marvel too. Why put Marvel in Star Wars? But that's such a small role. I think it would be okay. Now, speaking of diversity, I think that The Loving film, the upcoming movie by Jeff Nichols, which is trying hard to be an awards contender, particularly because The Birth of a Nation has stumbled with that scandal. Loving, the people at Focus Features, their awards campaign, we were just talking the other day about awards campaigns and how they're run, and they have to work really hard to put these movies in the public eye and to just craft that narrative. And I think the Focus Features has come up with a great idea. I was like, man, whoever came up with this should get a bonus. So I got a press release that said that the Loving team noticed that there are no interracial emojis. And I was like, what? That's ridiculous. And they were like, I know. They said there's same-sex couple emojis that are available, but no interracial emoji couples. So they have fixed that. Now, there are a couple of things that you can do. You could, and they're doing this to coincide also with the upcoming election, which is November 8th. And what do you know? Loving first hits theaters, I think in limited release, November 4th. So it's really good timing. So you can tweet #VoteLoving, #ThisIsLoving, or hashtag loving movie on Twitter, and you'll get a Mildred and Richard loving emoji pop up with the tweet. And I think that's very nice. Also, you can download the Love-Moji app for your phone, where you can have a whole bunch of couples available to you. And they have all different kinds of interracial couples depicted there, both heterosexual and same-sex couples, because it's important to note, and I really feel I hope they frame this in the film, that the loving case was actually used to help with legal cases challenging same-sex marriage. So it was kind of like the beginning of this whole idea of redefining, or not redefining, but opening up the idea of what love is, which is very beautiful. And they're celebrating that on voteloving.com. So you can head over there, and each day up until the election, they have a new story just depicting ordinary, everyday Americans in love. And just to show that love is what can change the world, not hate. And that, of course, has been a big topic during this election. So check that out. I think it's a really great idea. And I am really surprised there have been no interracial emojis up until now. That would seem, to me, pretty basic. Now, as for the viewer question, this comes from BTT viewer Michelle Duncan. And Michelle is following up on the story the other day that Meg LaFave has been promoted from screenwriter to co-director on Disney's upcoming Gigantic. So Michelle says, question, Grace, how do you direct an animated movie? Aren't the screenwriters, animators, producers more important? Help figure out how a director directs an animated movie. And then she put some very cute emojis and then said, So Michelle, you're adorable. All right, so this is the situation. I agree, making an animated movie is very different than making a live action project, right? And I'll put a link to this as well. I did a tour behind the scenes of Blue Sky Studios when they were releasing Epic on Blu-ray, and got to see how an animated movie is put together. And there do seem to be a lot of different moving parts that almost in some ways operate independently. But I think that's where the director comes in. You have so many pockets of people acting on their own, working down to the smallest detail. Who is the person who steps back and is responsible for the big picture? The directors. And there are often multiple directors in an animated movie. It's very rare to have a single director on an animated film. And I think that's part of it, because there's such a large team to oversee. And I think that's why you can have an animated movie, which is obviously in production, suddenly say, you're a director now. It's unusual to promote someone mid-production on any kind of entertainment project, right? But I think they can do that with animation, because I think they're like, wow, Meg really is going around talking to everyone, giving her input on character, emotion, settings, story arc, all this stuff. She's really kind of serving the role of a director in an animated project, so she should get the credit. So that's what I think the difference is, and that's why I think you have a different situation in terms of when someone can be named director on a project. So I think that while in a live action production, the director is very much like, the general in battle, right? And is very much overseeing everything at that moment. And they're really only working on one thing at a time. Although you may not know this, but when you make a live action movie, sometimes you have a second unit that will do pickups, sometimes stuff for action sequences. And the director sometimes is not on set for that, because they're doing it simultaneously to save money, for the purposes of timing and budget. So that second unit director will be in charge. But anyway, obviously with animation, because there's so much work to do, and look how long it takes to make an animated movie as is, you have people working on multiple things at the same time. So there isn't just one thing that you're shooting, right? Because everybody can use that actor. Everybody can build, or actors can be animated independently, etc. So I think that that's why a director is the person who steps back and makes sure everything is staying on track and that people aren't losing sight of the big picture, because that's their job. So I hope that's helpful, Michelle. Anyone who studies animation, I would love to hear you tune in as well to answer this. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today to this show. Let me know what you think of today's top 3 stories, Michelle's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.